My wife asked for divorce to chase her ex-boyfriend who just became available and I agreed, but when he rejected her for someone younger she begged to come back and discovered I was dating her successful sister. I never thought I would be posting something like this online, but I need to get this off my chest and maybe get some perspective on the situation. My name is Andrew and I am 35 years old. I have been married to my wife Rebecca, who is 33, for the past 8 years. We met in grad school when we were both getting our master's degrees. She was studying marketing and I was in finance. We hit it off immediately and started dating within a month of meeting. Rebecca came from a wealthy family in Connecticut. Her father owned a successful chain of automotive dealerships and her mother was a retired corporate lawyer. She had one older sister named Victoria who was 36 and worked as a surgeon in Boston. Growing up, Rebecca always felt like she lived in Victoria's shadow. Victoria was valedictorian, went to an Ivy League school, and became a doctor. Rebecca was smart and accomplished in her own right, but their parents always seemed more impressed with Victoria's achievements. I came from a more modest background. My dad was a high school math teacher and my mom worked as a nurse. I worked my way through college with scholarships and part-time jobs. When Rebecca and I started dating, I was honestly intimidated by her family's wealth at first. But Rebecca always told me she loved that I was ambitious and hardworking despite not having the same advantages she had. Before me, Rebecca had been in a serious relationship with someone named Blake during her undergraduate years. They dated for 3 years and according to Rebecca, it was intense and passionate but ultimately toxic. Blake came from old money, even wealthier than Rebecca's family. He was charming and adventurous but also unreliable and immature. He would make grand romantic gestures but then disappear for days without explanation. He talked about traveling the world together but never wanted to discuss practical things like careers or future plans. Rebecca told me that Blake broke up with her right before graduation because he wanted to backpack through Europe for a year and she wanted to start grad school. She was heartbroken at the time but eventually realized it was for the best. She said she had been chasing an idea of what their relationship could be rather than accepting what it actually was. When Rebecca and I got together, she said I was everything Blake wasn't. I was stable, reliable, and committed to building a real future. We got married 2 years after graduating and bought a house in a nice suburb outside the city. I got a good job at an investment firm and she became a marketing director at a tech company. We had a comfortable life with good friends and interesting hobbies. We talked about having kids eventually but agreed to wait until our careers were more established. About 6 months ago, Rebecca started acting differently. She was distant and distracted. She would spend hours on her phone and quickly close whatever she was looking at when I walked into the room. When I asked if something was wrong, she said she was just stressed about work. I believed her because she had been working on a big campaign launch. Then 3 months ago, she told me she needed to talk about something serious. She said she had been doing a lot of thinking about our marriage and her life in general. She told me she loved me but wasn't sure she was in love with me anymore. She said our relationship felt more like a comfortable friendship than a passionate marriage. She wanted to go to couples counseling to see if we could work through it. I was shocked and hurt but agreed to try counseling. We went to 3 sessions with a therapist. During these sessions, Rebecca talked about feeling like something was missing in her life. She said she felt like she had followed the expected path of getting a good job, marrying a stable guy, and building a conventional life, but now she was questioning if that's what she really wanted. The therapist asked if there was someone else and Rebecca hesitated before saying no. I noticed the hesitation but didn't push it. I wanted to believe her. Looking back now, I realize how naive I was being. 2 months ago, everything came crashing down. Rebecca came home from work one evening and asked if we could talk. She looked nervous but also oddly excited. She told me that Blake had recently gotten divorced after 5 years of marriage. He had married someone he met while traveling in Australia, but apparently it hadn't worked out. He had reached out to Rebecca on social media a few months ago and they had been talking. My stomach dropped. I asked her how long they had been talking and what exactly they had been talking about. She admitted they had been messaging almost every day for the past 3 months. Blake had told her that divorcing his wife made him realize Rebecca was the one who got away. He had been asking her to meet up for coffee to catch up. I asked if she had met him in person and she said no, she hadn't because she knew it would be crossing a line. But then she dropped the bomb. She said that talking to Blake had made her realize she still had feelings for him. She said she needed to explore those feelings and see if there was still something between them. She wanted a divorce. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was asking to end our 8-year marriage because her ex-boyfriend from college had suddenly become available again. I asked if she was seriously going to throw away everything we had built together for someone who had already proven he was unreliable and had just failed at another marriage. She got defensive and said I didn't understand. She said she had spent her whole life doing the responsible thing and maybe it was time she took a chance on something that made her feel alive. She said our marriage had become boring and predictable and she needed more than that. She said Blake understood her in ways I never could because they shared the same background and lifestyle. That last part really stung. Despite Rebecca always claiming my modest background didn't matter to her, it was clear she had been thinking about the differences between us. Blake's world of country clubs and summer homes was familiar to her in a way my world of coupon clipping and public parks never would be. I asked her if she had already made up her mind or if we could work on making our marriage more exciting. She said her mind was made up. She had already consulted with a divorce attorney. She wanted to move forward as quickly and amicably as possible. She promised to be fair about dividing assets and said she didn't want to drag things out. I was devastated but also angry. Part of me wanted to fight for our marriage, but another part of me felt like if she was willing to throw it all away this easily, maybe it wasn't worth fighting for. I told her I would agree to the divorce, but I needed some time to process everything. She seemed relieved that I wasn't going to make it difficult. She said she would move out and stay with a friend while we worked out the details. Within a week, she had packed up her things and left. The house felt empty and foreign without her there. Update 1. The divorce process moved faster than I expected. Rebecca's lawyer drew up the papers, and since we didn't have kids and had kept most of our finances separate, it was relatively straightforward. We agreed to sell the house and split the proceeds. We divided our belongings without much conflict. The whole thing felt surreal, like I was watching it happen to someone else. During those 2 months of finalizing everything, I saw on social media that Rebecca and Blake were officially together. She posted photos of them at expensive restaurants, art gallery openings, and weekend trips to the Hamptons. She looked happier than I had seen her in years. It hurt to see, but it also made me angry. She had ended our marriage for this guy, and she wasn't even trying to be discreet about it. My friends and family were incredibly supportive. My parents were shocked because they had always loved Rebecca. When I told them the real reason for the divorce, my mom was furious. She said Rebecca had made a huge mistake and would regret it someday. My dad said I deserved better than someone who would abandon a good marriage for a fantasy. Rebecca's parents reached out to apologize. Her mother called me and said she was ashamed of her daughter's behavior. She said she had tried to talk Rebecca out of it, but Rebecca insisted this was what she wanted. Her father sent me an email saying he had always respected me and thought I was good for Rebecca. He said he hoped I would be able to move on and find happiness. The person I heard from most surprisingly was Victoria, Rebecca's older sister. We had always gotten along well but weren't particularly close. She called me a few days after Rebecca moved out. She said Rebecca had told her what was happening and Victoria wanted me to know she thought Rebecca was making a terrible mistake. Victoria told me she had never liked Blake. She said he was shallow and immature and had treated Rebecca poorly during their relationship in college. She said she had been relieved when they broke up and thrilled when Rebecca met me. She thought I had been exactly what Rebecca needed to grow up and build a real life. Victoria and I started talking more regularly. At first it was just her checking in to see how I was doing, but gradually our conversations became longer and more personal. She told me about her own divorce 3 years ago from a surgeon she had met during residency. She said she understood what I was going through and that it did get better with time. We started meeting for coffee occasionally when she was in town visiting her parents. She lived in Boston but came down about once a month. I found myself looking forward to these meetings. Victoria was easy to talk to and we had similar views on a lot of things. She was driven and successful in her career but also down to earth and funny. I started to see qualities in her that I had always wanted Rebecca to have. The divorce was finalized 4 months after Rebecca first asked for it. I moved into a nice apartment downtown and started focusing on my career and hobbies. I joined a gym and started working out regularly. I reconnected with old friends I had lost touch with. I took a cooking class and started learning to play guitar. I was determined to not let this divorce define me. Meanwhile, Rebecca seemed to be living her best life with Blake. They took a trip to Paris. He bought her expensive jewelry. She posted constantly about how happy she was and how she had finally found her true self. Some mutual friends told me she had been saying she should have ended things with me years ago and that being with Blake reminded her of who she really was. Update 2. 6 months after our divorce was finalized, everything changed. I was at the gym one evening when I got a text from Victoria. She said she had just gotten off the phone with her mother and there was family drama happening. Rebecca and Blake had broken up. According to what Victoria had heard, Blake had met someone else. A 25-year-old yoga instructor he had met at his gym. He had told Rebecca that while he cared about her, he realized they had both changed too much since college and it wasn't working. He wanted to be with someone who was in a different stage of life and didn't have the pressure of serious commitment yet. Basically, Blake had done to Rebecca exactly what he had done to her 10 years ago. He had pursued her intensely, made her feel special, and then bailed when things got too real. Except this time, Rebecca had destroyed her marriage and stability to be with him. Victoria said Rebecca was devastated. She had quit her job because Blake had encouraged her to take time off and travel with him. She had been planning to find a new position eventually but hadn't been actively looking. Now she was unemployed, single, and according to Victoria, completely lost. I wish I could say I felt bad for her, but I didn't. I felt vindicated. She had thrown away our marriage for a fantasy and now she was facing the consequences of that choice. I told Victoria I hoped Rebecca learned something from this experience but that it wasn't my problem anymore. A week later, Rebecca reached out to me directly. She sent me a long email saying she had made a terrible mistake. She said she had been confused and stupid and had thrown away the best thing in her life. She said being with Blake had made her realize how good she had it with me. She said I was kind, stable, and genuinely cared about her, unlike Blake who only cared about himself. She asked if we could meet to talk. She said she understood if I was angry but she hoped we could at least have a conversation. She said she wanted to see if there was any possibility of us working things out and trying again. I didn't respond to that email. Instead, I called Victoria and told her what Rebecca had sent. Victoria was angry on my behalf. She said Rebecca had no right to come crawling back now that her fantasy had exploded. She said I deserved someone who chose me first, not someone who only wanted me when their better option fell through. During that phone call, something shifted between Victoria and me. We had been dancing around an obvious attraction for months, but both of us had been hesitant to act on it because of the complicated family situation. But that night, Victoria said she didn't care about the complications anymore. She said she had feelings for me and wanted to see where things could go between us. I admitted I had feelings for her too. We decided to start dating, but to keep it quiet from the family for a while until we were sure it was serious. We didn't want to cause drama or make things awkward if it didn't work out. Over the next 2 months, Victoria and I grew closer. She was everything I had wanted in a partner. She was ambitious and successful but also warm and caring. She valued stability and commitment but also knew how to have fun and be spontaneous. We had intellectual conversations about books and politics, but we also had silly inside jokes and laughed until we cried. I fell in love with her in a way I had never loved Rebecca. Rebecca continued to reach out periodically. She sent texts saying she missed me. She left voicemails saying she had been wrong about everything. She sent flowers to my office with a card asking me to give her another chance. I ignored all of it. Then 3 months ago, Victoria and I decided we were serious enough to tell her family. We knew it was going to be complicated, but we were committed to each other and ready to face whatever reactions came our way. Update 3. We decided to tell Victoria and Rebecca's parents first. We went to their house for dinner and broke the news together. Their mother was surprised, but after the initial shock, she seemed pleased. She said she had always liked me and thought Victoria and I made a good match. Their father was more reserved but said if we were happy, he supported us. We asked them not to tell Rebecca yet because we wanted to tell her ourselves when the time was right. They agreed, though their mother said Rebecca would have to know eventually, and the longer we waited, the worse her reaction might be. A few weeks later, we ran into Rebecca at a family event we didn't know she would be attending. It was her cousin's wedding and both Victoria and I had been invited separately. We had decided to go together as a couple, figuring it was time to be public about our relationship anyway. Rebecca's face when she saw us together was something I will never forget. First confusion, then recognition, then absolute horror. She walked up to us and asked what was going on. Victoria calmly told her that we were together and had been dating for several months. Rebecca lost it right there in the middle of the wedding reception. She started yelling at Victoria, accusing her of stealing her husband. Victoria pointed out that I was her ex-husband and that Rebecca had been the one who ended the marriage. Rebecca said it didn't matter, that this was a betrayal and that Victoria had violated some kind of sister code. Several family members had to intervene to calm Rebecca down. She ended up leaving the wedding early, crying hysterically. Her mother called Victoria later that night saying Rebecca was inconsolable and felt betrayed by both of us. Victoria told her mother that Rebecca had no right to feel betrayed considering she had destroyed her own marriage to chase after Blake. The next few weeks were tense. Rebecca sent both of us nasty messages saying we had planned this all along and that we were terrible people. She told mutual friends that I had clearly been having an affair with Victoria during our marriage, which wasn't true. Some people believed her version, but most people who knew the real timeline understood that Victoria and I had only gotten together after the divorce was finalized and Blake had dumped Rebecca. Rebecca tried several more times to reach out to me individually, alternating between begging me to leave Victoria and accusing me of using her sister to get revenge. I finally responded with a single message telling her to stop contacting me, that I had moved on and was happy, and that she needed to accept that and move on too. Eventually, Rebecca seemed to get the message. The angry messages stopped. I heard through the family grapevine that she had started going to therapy and was working on herself. She got a new job at a smaller marketing firm with less pay than her previous position, but it was a start. She moved into a small apartment and was slowly rebuilding her life. Victoria and I got engaged 8 months after we started dating. We had a small ceremony with close family and friends. Rebecca was invited for the sake of family peace, but she didn't attend. She sent a card wishing us well, which I thought was mature of her even if it was probably difficult. I am now 37 and have been married to Victoria for 6 months. We are expecting our first child in 3 months and couldn't be happier. Victoria is an amazing partner and I am grateful every day that things worked out the way they did. If Rebecca hadn't asked for the divorce, I never would have ended up with someone who is so much better suited for me. I saw Rebecca at a family gathering last month. She was polite but distant. She has been dating someone new, a teacher she met through friends. He seems nice and normal and hopefully good for her. She looks different now, more subdued and less confident than she used to be. I think the experience with Blake and losing both me and Victoria's respect really changed her. Victoria's mother told me privately that Rebecca has expressed regret many times about how everything happened. She apparently told her mother that she realizes now she had everything she wanted with me but didn't appreciate it until it was gone. She said she understands why Victoria and I ended up together and that she deserves to have lost us both. I don't feel any satisfaction in Rebecca's regret. I don't hate her or wish her harm. I just feel indifferent, which is probably the worst outcome for her. She went from being the center of my world to being someone I barely think about. The life I have now with Victoria is so much better than the life I had with Rebecca ever was. Looking back, I am grateful Rebecca asked for the divorce when she did. Yes, it was painful at the time. Yes, I felt rejected and betrayed. But if she hadn't ended things, I would have stayed in a mediocre marriage with someone who didn't truly value me. I would never have discovered what real love and partnership could be. Victoria and I are building a life based on mutual respect, genuine attraction, and shared values. We make each other better. We challenge each other to grow while supporting each other through difficulties. This is what marriage should be, and I never had that with Rebecca. Rebecca made her choice when she decided Blake was worth more than our marriage. She has to live with that choice and its consequences. I made my choice when I decided to move forward and eventually found something real with Victoria. I get to live with those consequences too, and they have been wonderful. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened. Rebecca asking for a divorce was my worst nightmare at the time. Now I see it was actually the push I needed to find my way to a much better life.